That's not the way Donald Trump does things. It's rambling from one half-vast idea to another, one plan that falls through and another comes up.
With all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. It is invariably the case that when you go too far trying to prove your case, you undermine it. Somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, it is invariably the case that when you go too far trying to prove your case, you undermine it.
It is invariably the case that when you go too far trying to prove your case, you undermine it.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast where we take a look at some really shitty news articles and explain to you why. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
Why what?
That's for you to find out.
Why are we looking at them at all?
Why are we looking at them? Why we do this?
Why we do this to ourselves?
This one's my episode, and I have some hot and spicy news that may or may not be 2 to 3 weeks old, but that's just the way it goes.
Fresh off the presses.
Rancid off the skillet.
Spicier than ever.
Don't worry, it was rancid before it was rancid.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It does, but only kind of. For the Washington Post, let's talk about a recent extreme event. The death of Shinzo Abe is a loss to the U.S. and its allies, which wouldn't be that remarkable except that it's written by John Bolton.
Oh, you mean we do coups, John Bolton?
Yep, I was going to introduce this episode with that video.
Well, great. Put it in there.
Yeah.
So I think it would be funny if we just ignored this article. Because John Bolton is so ignore-worthy. Like, he's so attention-seeking that he has to drop shit like that on interviews to be like, me, please, remember foreign policy. No, we've moved on. But go ahead.
You want to give like the entire Bush administration the cold shoulder?
Yeah, I want to. What's the word I'm looking for? Like shun them.
Silent treatment. Yeah.
Fuck them. You should all burn in hell, even though hell doesn't exist.
Whenever I see John Bolton, it takes me like 10 seconds to remember who he is. Because I just think I'm seeing a general from the Civil War who's on travel to the president.
I think he actually actively makes himself look like what Robert E. Lee looked like.
I believe it. This is the wonderful thing is that you can be on both sides of the aisle and be friends with Shinzo Abe because he was just that magnanimous and likable a dude.
I see Jamie Heineman personally, just like ugly.
Yes, actually, he does look. He looks like evil.
Don't do that to Jamie.
Natsec Jamie Heineman.
If Jamie Heineman was evil,
Natsec Jamie Heineman.
But yeah, sorry, not to cut off your point. I think it's definitely the case that he was getting, apologia from both sides of the U.S. Right wing. But yeah, like I don't know. This is it odd to me, or to you rather, that John Bolton is getting published in the Washington Post after they like explicitly said all the Bush administration people like lied to them and betrayed them with everything they ever did and should never be trusted again.
I don't know.
Does that strike you as at all strange? I don't know. Like, why would you publish it? Like, their whole claim, right? Like, why would they support the Iraq War? Why would they support the Afghanistan War? Because they were lied to, right? They were lied to by the Bush administration. This guy was like one of the chief architects of that. Why the fuck is he in their paper? I don't understand. Like,
different times, Alex.
What's their excuse?
Different times. It was a different era. He's a name. He's got clout. He's got numbers. He's got money. He can write. He publishes. People know his name. They want to read his garbage. Why does Kissinger get published? I mean, they're all ghouls of the same exact ilk.
I'm just saying, it really kind of gives away the game that they knew the whole fucking time and they didn't care. But
he's back from the days when people operated with dignity. When they did horrible things, they weren't posting their obvious Holocaust conspiracy theories on what do they call it? Like Talker or truth.org, whatever
Truth Central Social.
Yeah.
I said it the way Trump's brain fryers and says truth like truth central or something. But the point is to what you're saying, Alex, and to what you're saying, Aiden, like when there were fascists with dignity, evil ghouls who were like, "We're sorry, we have to nuke your country." That is still more respectable to the Democratic media establishment, or to the Washington Post or the print news media than the crankified conservatives today, because that still feels odious and like you're engaging in like the muck. You're getting muddy with the pigs. Whereas Bolton is like the pig standing on his two legs in Animal Farm. He's like, I'm a better pig. I don't roll around in the mud. I'm a civilized, advanced pig. Like, yes.
To answer your question, Alex, unfortunately, no, I'm not surprised for that reason. I am a little bit surprised that he's back, given the number of people that they could call upon to commentate on this kind of stuff. I thought Bolton was tainted enough by Trump association, his work with
right.
the Trump presidency. But I guess he was able to turn that around and be like, I was actually busy writing a book the whole time. I wasn't doing anything serious with them.
It's just like they like literally redid their paper's tagline to be like democracy dies in darkness because of Trump. They became famous for exposing Richard Nixon. They claimed that they were deluded on the war because of Bush. And this guy's had a hand in like every part of that. And they're like, you want to get into some op-eds in? What else you got? The doors are open. Anyway, besides the absurdity of it being Bolton, let's briefly talk about Shinzo Abe, right? Because we talked about this off stream, but we haven't actually discussed it on the podcast.
We didn't?
No, we actually didn't. Abe, for those who are not familiar, was a Japanese prime minister. He was like the longest serving one since World War II and the basically creation of their post-imperial state. Though if he had his way, it would have been an imperial state again. Very, very right wing, very aggressive. You could very much describe him as a hyper nationalist on the edge of fascism, in the sense that he wanted to remilitarize the state, much like Hitler did after World War II, or after World War I, rather. And I'm not saying he had quite the same degree of extreme prejudices that they did, but he was making extremely racist excuses for shit that Japan did in the past. So he was on that track as well. So not a good guy by any means, regardless of whether you think it was reasonable for him to die. It's probably not in the way he did, but not a good guy, right? You don't need to be writing him love letters after his death. But everyone seems to be doing, like, the most critical I ever saw was stuff by like NPR, which was like he had a mixed history, like controversial figure.
I see a different problem with the article headline, which is that it's leading.
Yes.
He was no longer in power.
Right.
He was running to be in power again. There was no guarantee he was going to win. So by Bolton saying this is a loss for the U.S., he's saying, like, it would have been great if he was back in charge again.
Yeah.
And this is trying to scold anyone who learns from this, don't be a psycho-nationalist. I mean, once again, this is why I think John Bolton should, maybe he should start a religious cult and scam people out of $900,000 and then get shot by their children.
Well, it's even more leading than that, right? Because what he's really saying is one of Abe's big things was that he wanted to remilitarize Japan so that they could create a unified axis against China and Korea. Because he wanted to basically remilitarize Japan, fully militarize Taiwan, remilitarize South Korea, and basically be ready at any moment to start World War III over some
bullshit. And by remilitarize, this is not the old form of war. This is put nukes in Japan.
Yeah.
For immediate destruction of the world. We'll raise a Japanese army and we'll fight on the highlands of China and win a land battle. That's not how wars work.
But like, this is literally someone who was calling for the nuclear armament of Japan, the only country in the world where like 90% of people do not want nuclear weapons
because they've been nuked,
because they understand what that means. Yeah, so deeply unpopular in some of his policies for very obvious reasons. But yeah, anyway.
And just that, like, there's also, if I don't know how much the average person is going to read into this, but like, if you compare Abe to current leader Kishida, he's not like, he was part of Abe's government. He's not hugely different, but he is more dovish and more progressive in some ways. And so there is the kind of the implicit idea of like, well, and also, it was back when Japan had like a better leader who was willing to like make the strong decisions and say the
Right.
strong things. I think just an interesting point is like, I think it's obvious that most Americans aren't tuned into the basics of Japanese politics. I certainly don't have a deep understanding of them besides the surface level. But I think also like this broad like praise and adulation for Abe is also possible because of the kind of geopolitical constraints that a leader of a country that's not a hegemon is under. Like Abe was entirely like a Bush or more conservative, but because he led Japan, he never had the opportunities to cause the destruction across the globe that Bush did. I just think that gives. I think that it's both like a practical observation that sure that makes him in many ways not as bad as Bush because he didn't cause real harm, but also it kind of gives a bit of cover to what his views would have extended into happening in the world if he were ever given the opportunity.
Right. If Abe was the leader of the free world, he would have looked identical and functionally to Bush. But it's a great point, Aiden, which is that the West for so long has been able to ride the coattails of the American security system and state that's been set up post World War II. So all these other countries, Germany, France, Japan, England, have all got to sit in the back seat as America leads the charge on evil. And they get to be like, well, I didn't do it. I voted against it. Everyone gets, most people aren't as stupid as Tony Blair, who'd be like, I will also sign up to do the evil. So the rest of the kind of Western system has just got to chill back, spend less on military, let America stick its dick in everything and fuck up, and just go about their, local, regional domination and focus on their economic growth.
There's a reason why criminal systems have things called attempted murder or conspiracy, not just murder. Right? Like, if you followed his political ideology, he would have liked to do a lot more evil shit than he was able to accomplish. Because even though his political party has held power pretty extensively in Japan for a while now, it has not had the consistent majority outright. It has had to do like deals, just like any parliamentary system.
Yeah, they always have to form coalition governments.
They did not have the raw, like, outright numbers to just wildly change Japan's constitution and do all the crazy shit he wanted to do. Like, literally turning them right back into being an imperial state with a full-size military in complete contravention of what their agreement has been with the United States after World War II, to basically combat China in a naval context, just literally potentially starting a global war because he felt like it, right? Like, because it was his pride on the line, because it was like, Japan has to be as big dicked as it used to be. And it's like, all the stuff he wanted to do was just as insane as fucking Putin in Ukraine. It's just that he, as you say, didn't have the power to do it.
And the best thing is that he gets taken down by fucking religious hubris. That's my favorite part.
Is that what happened?
The guy who killed him, his mom bankrupted their entire family, spending money, giving donations to Abe's dad's crazy religious organization cult he made.
Oh, God.
And so this guy's like, my life is in ruins and shambles, and it's because of Abe and his family that they scammed millions of Japanese people out of their pensions, and I don't like him, so I'm going to go blow him away. And that was that.
Yeah, in a country in which it's incredibly uncommon for gun violence, the fact that they actually assassinated political leaders is kind of incredible.
And it wasn't really on political grounds. It wasn't that, this is not World War I. This is not Franz Ferdinand getting shot. This is not even anything to do with national security. It's this guy and his family and his ilk scammed my family and millions of other people.
Yeah.
Yes, they deserve to die, and then I'm going to blow them away.
Watch out, Madoff. Like, yeah, that's basically what happened, it sounds like.
Isn't Bernie Madoff long dead?
Well, yes, but for the purposes of the joke, imagine if he was not. I couldn't think of another scammer who's currently, I don't know, Shkreli? Like,
he's not long dead. He died last April.
Oh, Jesus. Well, I get joke canceled.
Rest easy, King.
No, I'm saying that I shouldn't have jumped on him. I'm saying he's only recently dead. He's only 12 months dead.
He's fresh enough to dig up and shoot again.
He's only 16 months dead on the Young Frankenstein easel.
Well, in any case, this was obviously a huge news cycle for a while because it's so uncommon for a world leader to get assassinated in modernity. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it raises a question I think has always been somewhat interesting, which is, to what degree do we need to, like, show some sort of respect or dignity for deceased people who don't deserve it. Because I know that that's a huge talking point in pretty much every media cycle around these things. Is like, sure, Reagan was a monster, but he died, so show him some dignity. It's like,
No,
sure,
fuck him.
it's like I don't know, like we danced on the grave of Osama bin Laden for like 6 weeks as soon as we found out he was killed. Like we are almost certainly going to do the same thing when Putin dies. We're almost certainly going to do the same thing whenever anyone else we don't like dies. So I don't know. I don't even mind the idea of saying let's have some sort of dignity for people when they die. It just seems like it's never actually applied.
Well,
It's only for the handful of monsters who don't deserve it.
Also, conservatives were mad that Obama didn't dance in his grave harder. That they tried to return his body for a proper Muslim burial.
Yeah.
Like it's always the same thing. It's it's very rude to celebrate the death of my favorite people, but when it's their least favorite people who die, they celebrate. This is a polarized issue. I was happy when Falwell died and Hitchens danced on his grave. That was cool. I'm sure a bunch of right-wing cranks and religious people danced on the grave when Hitchens died. Like it is what it is. When people die, if they've built up followings or people with ideological connection, their supporters and enemies alike, celebrate or mourn.
Yeah.
I think fuck him, but because he's not alive to care about how he's thought of, his legacy. I don't give a shit about his family and his supporters, and I'm glad someone who was doing active evil in the world is gone. He can't be PM again.
I definitely agree that one of the things that most bothers me is what you said, Alex, is just the lack of consistency in the approach to it. Like anytime that someone like who tried to do good and had good values passes away, it's almost invariably reported as complicated person dies. It's like
Nelson Mandela, mixed figure.
Yeah, it's much more aligned, it feels like, with power and ethnicity than as anything else in the way that it's reported. And I'd rather just like have an honest reckoning. I'm sure that Abe helped some people in this country with his policies. So feel free to mention that, but let's just be honest, because I don't know. Yeah. There's really no moving forward if we just bury our head in the sand and pretend like everything is smooth sailing all the time.
Yeah. I do like, because again, I am sympathetic to arguments about like, let's have some sort of let's take a high ground and let's have some dignity about shit, but it just feels like the way it's always applied is completely one directional, and it's not a good direction. So if you can't have it the right way, then you may as well have it the second best way, which is just say it, just say the thing.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have my Ash Sarkar moment eventually when Obama dies and I'm celebrating. People are like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "What do you mean? Obama was evil."
You're gonna give another lauded to your hero, Obama, Jason?
When George Bush and Obama die, I will celebrate both of those days if I'm alive at the time.
He's your hero. All right, we can't do that whole episode all
I
over
will
again.
definitely celebrate when Piers Morgan dies.
All right, I mean, but that's bipartisan. Everyone's
the whole world comes
to
together.
It'll be bringing us together like Bin Laden.
When he gets like Bolsonaro disease.
All right. Well, speaking of terrible international leaders, let's talk about Putin briefly. New York Times: as Russia runs low on drones, Iran plans to step in, U.S. officials say. The potential delivery of hundreds of Iranian drones would help the Kremlin replenish a fleet that has suffered steep losses in Ukraine.
Then I step in.
So this is alleged. This is by U.S. intelligence services, but they say they have photos that prove that there's a drone deal afoot.
What's more likely is that the military aid that we're giving Saudi Arabia is being funneled directly to Russia.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not being precise enough here with the language of drones. When we think of like we're running low on drones, it's like we're running low on Christmas gifts to give our nephews. No, these are military UAVs. These are drones that can shoot missiles or are usually just doing spying, that are giant, like huge gliders that fly thousands and thousands of feet in the air. I don't think, I would say Iran just has a whole bunch of US style spy drones and weapons drones just chilling.
Hip hop style drones. Yeah, I don't know.
Must construct additional drones.
There was a whole meeting, right? Like there was a meeting where Putin came in and was shaking hands in Iran, but I don't think anyone mentioned anything about selling drones.
Well, you might be referencing. I just watched a video on this guy, Imran Khan, the previous leader of Iran, who claims that America basically got him removed. That he like met with Putin the day before the invasion of Ukraine. and like he admits
Wait, that's not the. I think that wasn't Iran, was it?
Am I wrong?
Imran Khan was Pakistan.
Oh, that's Pakistan. Sorry, my bad. There I go again, getting all my like.
I mean, yeah, it's
Middle
a different Middle Eastern state that the U.S. and Russia tried to manipulate.
Whatever. He was on my brain because he's an interesting guy who's like very honest and to a fault. He's like, look, we have strategic relations with Russian oil. Like, I'm not going to turn on them. Like, I need to help my people. So, all right. I don't know about this Iranian situation.
What did you have, Aiden? Yeah.
I was just going to say that, this is there's like, we've unpacked it in pieces before, but there's so much history here, so much conflict, and so much political tension. But the real thing, we are a media criticism podcast above all else most of the time, at least. And this is really like, I haven't read the piece obviously, but this is already going above and beyond. I'm just pulling it up. The level that journalism or journalists demand of the intelligence community and the government. They at least name someone. They name Joe Biden's national security advisor.
Yeah.
Although they don't name how he got his information, I bet. Normally it's just the department says, an anonymous source from the department says.
Several other articles also said like intelligence services and such. Like they didn't even name anyone.
I mean, we treat in America every other intelligence service, every other spokesman for other countries as having a very direct agenda, but we never really, our news never really considers that when taking into account what our own government and intelligence services tell them to print directly. And so it really makes stuff like this, even though this could be true. I don't know. It makes it so hard to take at face value because why they've been trying to sabotage the nuclear deal forever. I mean, Biden has like mumbled about maybe wanting it to happen, but he's dragged his feet long enough that it's probably going to fall apart regardless. So, and intelligence services certainly don't want it to happen. So, I mean, it's just impossible to really view this with any faith. Which is frustrating in a way, because even if it is news that I don't want to hear, I want to be up to date with what's happening in the world. But to read this and just have to throw up my hands and be like, I guess I'll just have to wait and see till it's corroborated.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, not only do they want to scarper any attempt at the nuclear deal, they want to destroy the country. Like, they've been trying to get the United States a plausible pretext to invade Iran since, at the very least, Iran-Contra era. Like, the clerics have taken over, and this is unacceptable. Like, it was not even a secret. Like, the Bush administration's internal memos are like, yeah, Iran's next. This has been a thing for a very long time. Where
they've wanted to do that for 40 years, though.
That's what I mean. Well, that's what the first thing I said. Yeah, like
what I'm saying is, it's not like to your point. This isn't news, and so the fact that like, Iran's at it again. It's like you're just baiting us. You're just trying to look for any excuse to blow away a general, or blast some wedding, or just do whatever the fuck you want to do anyway.
Right, and now that we're past the Trump administration, which just like did whatever, it seems to me like the intelligence agencies are just right back to their old bullshit, which is ginning up plausible reasons to destroy Iran. And again, like, I don't know, as Aiden said, whether this is true. It could be true. I think there is actually a military drone production capacity for Iran. Would they want to give them to Russia? Would they want to become antagonistic with Ukraine and NATO and EU? Seems unlikely.
Also,
but
who cares if we give them more drones? We'll just keep giving Ukraine more stingers and fucking javelins, and we'll just keep blowing them out of the sky. Like, it doesn't matter. All this does is keep filling the military industries with money. It doesn't affect us at all. Why would we give a shit?
The argument would be, right, that this is like signs that they help the evil ones. And I have
deals with Russia. The people do deals with evil states. We have deals with Saudi Arabia. Who gives it? Like,
here's where it gets really insane, because I read a little bit of this one. They cited the fact that they had armed a whole bunch of other Shia groups in the Middle East to, fight whatever their conflicts were as evidence that they're sponsors of terrorism, even though the very, very obvious threat to every single one of them was religious affiliation. had fuck all to do with even their politics.
Also known as terrorism in America.
So they were supplying the Shia in Yemen, even though there's a different version of Shia. I don't even know if that one's proven, but that's what they're asserting. They're supplying more openly, like Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're supplying other Shia militants in Iraq during that various conflicts. So, like, yeah, they're supplying other Shia because they're the center of Shia Islam in the world.
Right. I mean,
Well, that has nothing to do with Russia.
it's this insane pretending of Americans that everyone accepts the same framing we do. Oh, that Iran's like, you got us sponsoring terrorism. They don't view what they're doing as terrorism. They don't have to agree. Like,
the idea that Iran, which sees itself because it's a theocratic state as the defender of Shia Islam, would feel the same compulsion to send military weapons to one of the most powerful countries on earth so that it can do a war that's already doing. Those things don't even track. And since when do we call states terrorists again? I thought the Bush administration did away with that. And anyway, there's a reason why this whole thing felt like a throwback to 20 years ago, and I led with Bolton.
Right, exactly. Also, like, who cares? Russia does financial and military deals with their neighbors. This is to be expected. Countries work with other countries near them. It doesn't matter if we don't like them today or the last year.
They're still selling gas in Europe.
Right, Germany's still taking every day thousands of gallons of Russian gasoline, so
yeah.
No one's really that mad at them because everyone gets it that we live in a totally globalized economy.
Like, you could very easily make the case that everyone who's still buying oil from Russia is buying those drones for them if those drones are real. Like, what does it matter which one did which thing? I mean, even if it was true, which would be not, I admit, a good look for Iran, it's like everyone's complicit in this fucking thing. We haven't completely shut down our ties with Russia. The fucking people with the most balls out there are apparently like the tennis association who won't let ethnic Russians play. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's tennis. It's England in particular because of Boris Johnson. It's all he could hold on to, and America, who are having moral panic about doing deals with Russia so much that we're doing deals with socialist South America now, and we're like violating our own American insane principles just to get more oil at a better rate. It's very funny.
So it's just, again, like, in case anyone's confused on this, it would obviously not be a good thing to give Russia drones or help them in any way blow up innocent people in Ukraine. But that's not really what's going on here. Like, none of this is proven, and even if it was, it would be a drop in the bucket compared to what we're all doing here. Yeah. Anyway.
And it's also just propaganda from the State Department.
Right. And probably pretty effective. In the first place. Like, they've probably done some polling and figured out, like, the vast majority of Americans despise Russia for what they're doing. Let's use that as an ethical bridge to imply negative things about Iran.
Except for all, like, top conservatives who are still defending Russia.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets really confused. Though I still think that most of them are starting to drift away from the pro-Russian stance because it's just, like, not tenable.
We'll see.
Well, while we're on foreign policy, let's shift over from what the crazy sort of right-wing thinkers are doing into what the progressive communist Joe Biden is up to.
Getting COVID.
From Politico, the one word Biden won't say in Israel.
Oh my God, it's literally the same article every time that's been published for 20 years. The one word Obama won't say when he, visited Lebanon. The one word Hillary Clinton's willing to say, like, shut up, stop, quiet, go away, stop it.
Okay, but gut impulse, you each get one guess. What word is it?
All right, I can't say it on the podcast.
Wiper? I don't know. A callback? I don't know what
it shouldn't be complicated, right? He's going to Israel.
Well, hang on. Did he go to Israel before? I saw the singer who, like, refused to shake his hand. Was this before or after he tried to talk to MBS?
This is before.
About Khashoggi, and then
that's
MBS,
literally our next stop. That's our next.
People have watched the news. What's the one word Biden won't say in Israel? Settlements? I don't know.
That would be a good guess.
Palestine, right?
Yeah, Palestine. I would say 99.9% of the time would be the word, right? Like, that's the word. The thing you don't want to say is that Palestine is a sovereign state.
Because to say the name is to acknowledge it's a state.
Is it the N word? What are we talking about?
But Turkey? It is not settlements, and it is not Palestine.
How about Turkey?
Well, that would be fun. I think they're still allies, technically.
One word.
We get some more guesses?
I mean, you could guess what you want. Like, you're past the one guess, but
I don't know.
Funny.
That journalist that they fucking murked?
Yeah.
Kids throwing rocks. I don't know.
Right,
Netanyahu.
Ramadan, yeah, like
Who knows?
any of the recent scandals. No, do you want to keep guessing? Because we could just move on.
I mean, all I can think of is slurs at this point.
Tits. I don't know. Like what the 7 words you can't say on the radio. Who
You're
knows?
gonna be upset. The word is Donald Trump.
That's 2 words,
That's
fuckers.
2 words, motherfucker.
Well, Trump.
Okay.
Oh God.
The entire article
Wait, where's
is.
where's this article from, Alex?
This one was Politico. The entire article is about how Trump was so much better to Israel. So even though Biden's still enormously pro-Israel, he can't acknowledge his predecessor because then they'll be like, we really miss him and liked him better because he did all the things we liked, which were evil.
Hey, Israel has a new leader too. Just
Right, like the one word the new dipshit who runs Israel won't say to Joe Biden, Netanyahu. Like our relationships with allies is not like, oh, you're not pay-pigging me enough. Oh, you're not like scratching my belly enough. It's not a whole bunch of cats that you have to keep happy and you have to balance these relationships. God,
that's insane.
It's infantilizing about the way foreign policy gets done.
What an insane.
Joe Biden, who's been focused on cost of living, oil prices, a war in Ukraine, COVID still, like being ancient and decrepit and brain dead.
But he waited over a year to visit Israel.
Right, is that he hasn't gone to Israel enough.
During an international pandemic where you weren't allowed to visit Israel.
And he's gotten COVID 8 times and fell off his bike 9 times. Like, who gives a shit whether he's going to Israel?
This motherfucker
probably got COVID on this trip.
Brags about being Irish every time he's interviewed. He should not be visiting Israel at all.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, I think that's actually even mentioned. It's like he briefly supported the IRA, a deeply well-known Palestinian organization.
This is insane. If I ever became president, day one, I'm going to like Scotland and talking to them about independence. I'm going to like Laos. Like I'm going to all the weird shit so that the op-ed writers' brains explode. Like how dare he show dignity to these obscure places that no one gives a shit about.
But it's just, this is the most American brain dumb guy take possible.
Very much.
You know what the Israelis are really concerned about? Whether or not you're as evil as Donald Trump in the way that they liked, and not the whole Palestinian situation.
It's almost like they don't give a shit if we reelect this giant fat bag or not, because nothing changes, because they're not in control of the purse strings, because all the money we give to Israel is done through the Senate, which is bought and sold by them. It's like up to Joe Biden to change any of this.
It's not even just bought and sold by them. It's like deeply ideologically interlocked with what the Israeli project
because the psycho Christians who think the world's going to end if we get Israel cool.
Like, make no mistake, like this is not some like Zionist conspiracy theory like, oh, the Israelis control America. No, America does this for its own reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Like America fucking loves having an imperial outpost in the Middle East that can do whatever we need them to do. Like that support is not changing no matter who's president. It could be the fucking ficus president. It wouldn't matter. They would get their huge check no matter how many American journalists they assassinate.
Even the golden retrievers.
Yeah. Like, it would not matter what they did. Like, as long as they don't straight up, like, kill Joe Biden, they will continue to get our support, right? So it's completely absurd to act for even a moment as though that was, like, in serious jeopardy. Like, remember when Netanyahu was, like, freaking out because Obama wasn't as pro-Israel as he would have liked, and it meant absolutely nothing? And we still got 100% support of them even after he humiliated him by visiting the U.S. Congress without even notifying the president? Yeah, it's just... That's unchanging. That's as we say, like third rail. So it's completely crazy that that's a thing that even seems like it might be risked, and that the risk might just be that you exist and you're not Trump.
And according to the media, the measure of a president is how much dick they blow of the people they like.
Yeah.
You didn't adulate these people enough. You didn't support them enough. That's what makes you a good or bad president, according to these ghouls. I gotta get some ice or something. I gotta cool down.
That's a wild one.
Yeah. Really, really nuts. Like, especially when you consider that, as we were just talking about, there's this whole scandal over the assassination of an American Palestinian journalist, which is brewing right now.
She was
she was American
months ago though, or weeks ago at least.
Well, yeah, but the State Department only released their asinine.
They only acknowledged it.
They're like asinine. The bullet adjacent to her face.
They did the scene. They did the scene in The Dark Knight where Batman magically figures out the Joker's fingerprint by looking at the bullets that were shot into the wall of that building, and he runs a test with a giant Gatling. And then Steve Drummond's like, we couldn't decide, inconclusive.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the family of Abu Akla was pressuring Biden and his administration to, in some way, shape, or form, seek restitution and or vengeance against the Israeli state for assassinating this journalist who was both Palestinian and American. And the State Department's like, we see you, we feel you. You know, it's like, we understand that the bullet was shot from an Israeli weapon, most likely, given that it's unambiguously an Israeli bullet. And also it happened during an Israeli military operation. And also it's from like a sniper, so it's not exactly hard to see how they would have aimed at Europe. But we don't know their intent. We're not sure why. So like, is it even really murder if they didn't mean to, for sure?
It's very similar to the WNBA situation where there's a woman detained in Russia for like owning a vape pen,
right,
and having cartridges. Like, she was just trying to sell it, and like, and Joe Biden's like, yeah, it's a bad time to try and get you extradited back here because you didn't violate any rules.
Yeah, because he's a feckless imbecile,
and because American sports is so fucking chauvinistic that in order to make a living wage of being like a top professional athlete, you have to go play in Russia half the year. Like, presidents don't actually solve issues. They're there to cry on everyone's shoulder when people die.
But even besides his fecklessness, you would think if you were writing an article about the thing not to mention in Israel, it would be like the American journalist they recently assassinated, or Palestine, or settlements, or boycott, or like any of the numerous things that are extreme hot button issues in Israel. No, it's Trump. That's it.
You think articles like this get written just so Trump is happy? Just so he can
it almost feels like it, right?
Search his name, be like, yes, they're talking about me still.
Yeah, the level to which the press is still Trump-brained is insane to me. It's truly bewildering. Like, especially considering, like, if he were still like doing things that merited national news, or still had like his ascendancy was still moving towards its zenith, it might mean something. Like, I would still wouldn't like it, but it would mean something. But the fact that he has been more and more kind of fading from his ascendancy as other figures like DeSantis get more traction, it's like, people just can't get over how much he bucked like expectations of how presidents are supposed to operate. It's really fucking annoying.
I'm still personally hoping that he comes back as a third party ticket just to completely ass fuck the Republicans, and we get like a bull moose party.
Fingers crossed.
Trump.
It's very unlikely to happen, but we'll see.
It's just like in the dumbest but also best of all possible worlds, that's what happens. All right. One other thing on Biden's Middle Eastern trips, which we already alluded to from CNN. I hope you've seen this video because it's funny. Why Joe Biden's fist bump with MBS was such a disaster.
I haven't seen that, no. I just read a thing that like some Jewish singer wouldn't shake his hand, and then he went to MBS. He met with MBS. Here's what I saw 2 articles. One was like, Joe Biden's a pussy for not bringing up Khashoggi more, and then the other one's like, Joe Biden's a pussy for bringing up Khashoggi to MBS. I'm like, I don't understand. What do they want? What is happening?
I mean, he shows up at he literally is meeting MBS like in person, and the very first thing they do is fist bump. It's
the explosion after too.
Yeah, I don't know, Alex. I saw one headline that called it a chilly fist bump. So that's.
But is it a terrorist fist bump that Obama did with his wife?
It's kind of got the energy of like awkward old man and confused younger man fist bump. Like they don't know
how old
if they're supposed to be doing it. I'd say like 30s.
30s? Holy shit, Joe Biden's looking old. Oh my god, he barely has any hair.
MBS is 36, whereas Joe Biden is 79. So
Jesus
them having a fist bump is just kind of strange.
Why are you not a sultanate billionaire, Alex, by this time?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm a year out from being one of the most corrupt and evil shitheads on the planet. But yeah, like, Joe Biden looks like death, and he's trying to do like this I'm assuming African American tradition. I don't even know what he thought he was doing, and
How
MBS
do you
looks at him.
remember? Black people love voting for Biden.
MBS is looking at him at first, and because this is like after it's happened, but there's a few seconds where he looks at him like,
What are you doing?
Are we doing this? Like, it's like are we Snoop Dogg and fucking the Home Improvement woman or whatever?
Biden just has like a,
Roseanne?
No,
What?
not the show. The woman who went to jail briefly. He's like friends with now.
What?
Martha Stewart.
Oh,
It's like a Snoop
Like
Dogg
we're
Martha
homies.
Stewart thing. Like when Snoop Dogg wants to fist bump her, she's like, "Oh, this is quaint." You know, like that's what it feels like, except like even more tense because they're not really friends. I don't know. It's just super weird. Like I watched it. I was like, "What's going on?" Like, is he trying to get like woke with MBS? Like I don't know what he's trying to do.
he probably doesn't. He probably in his brain, the wire in his ear said, "All right, don't shake his hand, because that would be too dignified an introduction.
Yeah,
That would be like a tacit endorsement." So he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, what do the kids do? A fist bump."
it's an anti-COVID measure, Jack.
Even though they're making contact.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows or cares? Why does this matter at all, other than for, as you say, the media to lose their minds over?
Well, even besides the fact that it's funny, which is I think half the reason it got this much coverage, he had promised explicitly to like spank MBS's bottom for Khashoggi when he was running. Like he was like, once I get there, I'm going to show him what's what. I'm not even going to go there in person. I'm going to send him a sternly worded letter. And then he gets there and they like do blow bubbles and like smoke hookah and take showers together. Like that's basically what the media is calling him on, as being a massive liar, which I guess is fair.
Right, but why did he even go there? Why did he meet with them?
Great question.
oil, baby, and regional security, because there's the Abraham Accords and all that they're trying to work out.
Couldn't do this over Zoom?
Biden, yeah, MBS is really like, at least optics wise, fully made a cuck out of Biden.
Yeah,
it's pretty pathetic. Like, because this meeting comes after like months of him being like, "No, I can't meet. I don't want to meet right now. We're not going to talk." And then Biden, bless him, apparently hasn't got a mean bone in his body. Right back to being best friends as they fist bump and la di da through the palace. Yeah. This was I had low expectations, and this was just pathetic to watch.
I prefer the images where he hangs out with King Solomon, because he's 86. King Solomon's old as shit, and that's ABS's dad, I think.
Yeah.
And it's fun seeing like old geriatric people together.
Well, that would have been a more appropriate meeting.
Or like the G20 old folks home. God, MBS is such a smug son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Every smile, every image he's in, it's just this giant shit-eating grin.
It's appropriate.
He's totally untouchable.
He's winning. He's winning at his version of life. That's for sure.
He's like not particularly competent or smart or has any ethical core, and he's like king shit of his country.
Yeah, but when you have infinite money and like dope ass desert fashion,
yeah, exactly. Like,
stop you.
He's living a blessed life. He's kind of like a Trump of Saudi Arabia.
They're dozens of orders of magnitude more wealthy than Trump.
No, what I'm saying is totally undeserved wealth, totally undeserved fame, totally undeserved political power, just kind of thrown into his lap.
Well, yeah, because they're a kingdom. He has royal blood because they're living 500 years in the past at least.
Well, sure, but also he like outmaneuvered his siblings and like got them executed or deposed to weasel his way into this position.
It's how it be.
Anyway,
doing it in real life.
I don't know. Like, how upset should we be with Joe Biden at this point for being a piece of shit liar? Like, is anyone surprised? Like, did anyone think that Joe Biden was an honest man? Because that's what a lot of these papers are like. We can't believe Joe Biden would lie like this.
I think every day the collective news media is going through Groundhog Day. Every day their brain resets and they think, "Oh, I live in a normal world where the president is a good person who's trying to do the best for himself and the country." And then they're constantly disappointed because Joe Biden acts as we know he is wont to do, which is being an old dipshit. And they are shocked and flabbergasted, appalled. Every Stephen A. Smith big word I can, bamboozled, hoodwinked. Like, he's just being himself. He's always been this way. Why is anyone shocked or surprised? This is the most normal thing he's done in his entire administration.
Yeah, I don't know. At this point, like, Joe Biden, who's a career politician, and he was actually decent at it before his strokes, Like he's like an inveterate liar. He's been a liar his whole life. That's like how he succeeded. He's been in the pocket of the same companies that gave him skin cancer. Like it doesn't mean anything to him. This whole thing is just like he's playing out glory days. Like, should anyone for even a moment be surprised that he's lying about what he's going to do and then he does the bad thing? That's been what he's done from day one. He hasn't fulfilled almost any of the things he said he was going to do in the campaign. And everyone's scandalized now because he's meeting with MBS after Khashoggi. Khashoggi was years ago. No one cares. Like no politicians actually give a shit about that. They didn't even care. They don't care about Akla, and they're talking about that 2 weeks ago. You think he's going to care about Khashoggi? I don't know. It was very weird to me that the media took this like this tone of total abject, like not Mr. Biden. He wouldn't do that to us. It's like, oh, yeah, he already did like 20 times.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get many of those. Oh, Mr. Biden, how could you do this? Because most people who believe that he's honest will be like, yeah, sometimes presidents have to prioritize bigger things over bone-sod journalists.
If you just had to guess without looking it up, when was Jamal Khashoggi killed? What year?
I thought it was 2015, but I could be wrong.
He was killed in 2018, looks like.
Oh, really? All right.
The point is, he was killed in the middle of the Trump administration. It's been 4 years. Why did people think like this is the moment? It's like the new Olympics. They're like, we're gonna get him this time. No, what? Journalists get wiped and killed all the time. I'm not saying it's defendable, but like the idea that everyone was waiting with hands clenched, hoping that Biden was going to get justice for them. What are you talking about? How do they think the world works? It's staggering. Like, just like lack of connection to reality. Whether he's going to stand like standing up for Khashoggi, standing up for them because he was also a journalist. Like, what? People like that are disposable all the time.
Yeah,
and violence gives no shit, and power gives no shit about inconvenient voices like that.
I mean, I do understand like American journalists imagining that they are somehow inviolate and like the messengers of antiquity who would carry a flag that indicated they couldn't be harmed. But like the only reason that works is when your state's actually willing to enforce it, and the United States doesn't care if it contradicts their national security interests in their mind, which in this case it would. It's the same reason they're not going to punish Israel. It's the same reason they're not going to punish Saudi Arabia. They're not going to punish our allies over something like that, and that really scandalizes a lot of journalists who imagine themselves to be like sacrosanct. And it's like, you know what? Everyone should be sacrosanct. Nobody should be getting murdered, but you are deluding yourself if you still think the United States cares about that as a political entity.
I'd like to see them square the concept of them being sacrosanct when they're saying the one word Biden forgot to say is Trump.
Right.
I mean, fuck off. You're not sacrosanct as an institution and an industry because of what you've done to yourselves and how you've been captured by capital and just wantonly accepted it. You don't have to operate your businesses the way you do them. You don't have to be craven, greed-mongering assholes. You don't have to be power-hungry, delusional monsters who want to just get in power. You can do actual journalism. Guess what? There are actually good journalists out there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to me when you have like colleagues of Khashoggi's from the Washington Post talking about how basically laundering MBS's reputation by saying that he's painted so often as like a mindless villain, but he's actually like a cunning person who can be worked with. And then you have like AP News still laundering Israel's reputation after having their offices bombed out by indiscriminate airstrikes. It's like your institutions, your fellows have been under violent assault, and you still are doing the work of the assaulters. At a certain point, it just seems like a matter of self-preservation to call these out and put pressure on institutions to try to protect you more. But like, why would even if Biden were a man with more will and more integrity, why would he do anything when the victims aren't even calling out? At least in terms of as much as we can view the papers themselves and not the journalists and their families as the victims.
Right. Yeah. If the papers can't do it, then obviously the president's not going to fucking waste his breath. Well, we were going to talk about, what journalism still has to offer to make it credible, but then I decided not to. Let's talk about more bad journalism as we move away from foreign policy. with a really wild article, which, well, I'll just post it. This is one from Politico.
Uh-oh.
A real chilling effect. A
No, I was gonna
lefty
use-
scholar is dumping cap for AEI,
No.
which is to say the Center for American Progress for the American Enterprise Institute. Rui Teixeira, or Texera, I'm not sure.
Teixeira. I read
Teixeira,
this one.
I gathered from multiple interruptions, predicted Obama's rise. Now he's scorning DC liberal think tanks for caring more about diversity than class. So y'all know who this is? Sounds like you do, Jays.
He's old as shit, which is the first thing that was odd to me. This guy's in his 70s, and he's been a career, like, liberal think tank writer. I'm sure he's loaded. Just retire is what I'd say. But secondly, it was an interesting article. I read most. I don't know if I read most of it or all of it, but it was weird. He's like now going to work for a conservative outlet, and he's going to be their token progressive, but they're going to let him write the work he wants to do. And it's very odd. When I was much younger, I thought about, especially when I was in DC, thinking about working for Center for American Progress. And I was put off by the shit I was seeing then. It's the same stuff he's really talking about. That there's been this convenient ignoring of material conditions and class as the fundamental crux on which our society operates, and pretending all that shit doesn't matter and just focusing on the hyper social aspects. And not to say those don't matter, but the current American left inflates how much that shit quote unquote matters and impacts and coerces power. That is the crux of the article. It made no sense why he was going over to a conservative place though to do his writing, because it's not like they're going to respect him anymore there. I don't know. It was very odd. It was like, why should I care about this one career, like, academic? Basically, like I didn't understand the importance of this. So, like, why is this need to be written about? But it just seemed to be like a way to shit on the current left, but do it in a weird way instead of directly addressing it. Just like, let's hear what this random guy has to say because we don't want to do the work. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I just want to briefly point out that the head of the Center for American Progress still recently was Neera Tanden.
Yeah.
And was previously headed by John Podesta. Like, this is not a lefty think tank. It is a centrist, like, democratic think tank with squarely, like, Obama, Bill Clinton politics, right? Biden politics. This is not in any way, shape, or form a left-wing think tank. And that's even before you get to the issue of, like, social stuff. Like, it was never, even from its inception, a left-wing think tank. It's just not the Heritage Foundation, right? It's not the far right think tank, but it is a right-wing think tank in international standards, and at most a centrist think tank even by American standards. So already crazy to frame that as a lefty organization. Then you have the issue that this guy was never left-wing. He may say, like, oh, they don't talk about class enough, but his most common gig outside of the Center for American Progress was fucking, like, Rand or whatever the libertarian one was. Let me find his article, actually.
Yeah, but once I didn't look up a biography of this guy, but it seems like, look, there's a lot of left libertarians out there. I mean, that is a legitimate position.
He was working at the fucking Brookings Institution. He was working at...
what I took away from this is that he's just trying to get published anywhere, which is why I wasn't able to make sense of why he's so unhappy at CAP. It's like, I guess he doesn't like the environment. Everyone's talking about, like, wokeness and, like, in-pol shit. It's like, okay, fine, but you're not going to do any better with a bunch of, necktie dipshits like Tucker Carlson, where he's going to basically be working now. So they're trying to frame it in the very well understood issue of, like, liberals becoming conservatives, and there's huge money in that. There's to have that, like, public transition, but I just didn't understand the point of what the article was trying to convey.
I guess what I'm saying is, at the very most, maybe this guy's like a New Deal Democrat. Like, let's do some social democracy, FDR style, right? Because none of the stuff that he's been involved in is in any way what we would describe as left wing, and that's evident from his entire history. You could look him up on Wikipedia. But all of the books that he's published are, like, completely anodyne, mainstream. Like, let me read you some of the books he's worked on. Red, Blue, and Purple America, The Future of Election Demographics. The emerging Democratic majority, America's forgotten majority, why the white working class still matters, the disappearing American voter. Like, they're all bland political science texts. Like,
he's just a career academic, right?
Yeah, none of this is like the overthrow of the state. No,
this isn't Chomsky or Zizek.
Right.
He's like, I'm a very unhappy at Cap, and I want to move. He's just some guy.
He's not like why the kulaks must be liquidated. Like, he's not writing radical left wing screeds. Like, that's not who this person is.
Yeah, but in America, his like we're forgotten about the white working class would raise an eyebrow and like a monocle would pop out, and someone would raise their pinky at their Morning Joe coffee because that's like communism in America.
His book, The Emerging Democratic Majority, received praise from George Will. I'm just saying, like, this is not like this is someone who's seen as broadly a bipartisan appeal because they're like a neutral academic. So anyway, the entire framing of this is insane, which is that this is like a far left academic who has had a change of heart, right? Well, no, they were never far left. And I don't even think they had a change of heart. It sounds like the only thing they really cared about was like social democracy stuff, and neither major party ever offered that. So now they're just taking the bag from Heritage Foundation.
Right. And the question is, why should I care? Why should I be invested in some old academic's career change? Like, I don't care. This is like trying to convince me why I should care about Joe Buck and Troy Aikman changing from Fox, NFL broadcast to CB. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't care at all.
Yeah, it's on that level. What do you think, Aiden?
I mean, I just think, as usual, they give the hollowness of their headline away in the subheading. I mean, they immediately go to give his credentials by saying he predicted Obama's rise, as if Obama becoming president is a victory for progressivism. I mean,
that's what the lefties wanted.
They're trying to do the thing they do with all the dipshits who called the financial crisis. He saw it coming, and instead of telling us or doing anything about it, he's like, "Oh, he predicted." He's one of a couple million people. Like, "Oh, this Obama guy looks like he's promising."
Yeah, he's a true Nostradamus. Not like we have a fucking recession every 15 years.
And it's especially ironic because, well, I do think that having a president of color was a victory in some senses. It completely goes against what his main complaint is, that people care more about diversity than class.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He's obviously not a real leftist in any way that we would credential him. This is like saying, Glenn Greenwald is gay. Now he's best friends with Tucker Carlson. What a real chilling effect on the American left.
Leftist Hillary Clinton feels out of place in modern politics.
Yeah, but you joke, but those articles have been written.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is an actual gaslighting of the American public as if there is no left.
Right, but it's half true. Its perception is reality. There is a minimal left in America, and those in charge have incentives to keep it that way and pretend that the Democratic Party is left. That way they can squeeze out actual leftists.
There's substantial buy-in on left-wing principles by huge segments of the electorate. They just have no political party.
Correct.
But the other issue is this entire framing. To me, it's actually a lot like the Iran selling drones thing, which is like they're trying to use something that sounds right but has almost no evidence to try to launder a point. The thing they're asserting, right, which is like, oh, it's all about everyone's just talking about trans issues and racial problems instead of class. It's like, even if you believe that, there's no evidence that that's why this guy did what he did whatsoever. He almost certainly is just, I can get more money from the Heritage Foundation than I could get from his cap, so I took the job. Like, throwing that thing and just kind of throwing like minorities under the bus because it's easy and it like appeals to the class reductionist in us doesn't mean that that's why he did what he did, and doesn't even prove any of his assertions about that being true.
Right, he probably just wanted to raise it would cover inflation. Like, you're cool.
It's like when the fucking CVS shuts down, they're like, it's because of crime. And it's not just because they are full of shit and they wanted to shut it down because there's like a labor union forming or whatever. Like, they're laundering almost certainly self-interested calculations and like, look what the kids have done. Look what the college kids have done to us, good lefties. It's like, fuck off.
It's Neera Tanden and the Black Democrats' fault. This old academic got a different job.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool story. I'm really invested.
And it's insulting because it's like you think that this 70-year-old man who has never been a leftist joined the Heritage Foundation because of college kids and tweens on TikTok. That was what put him over the edge. Get a fucking dick, dude. Like, honestly, if you actually gave a shit about any of your political principles, you would in no way, shape, or form be concerned with what they're saying on TikTok or what they're saying on safe spaces in campus. You would hold consistent to your political principles, which would mean not joining the Heritage Foundation like an absolute clown.
Or leaving CAP 15 years ago.
Jesus
or like 10
Christ.
years ago. When Neera Tanden went in charge going, all right, this is my time to leave because fuck that bitch.
These people have no principles. They're only on about race and gender, and that's all bullshit. I have principles. That's why I'm joining the Heritage Foundation. It's just like, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I don't know. Like, the Heritage Foundation is pure fucking evil. What are you doing? It's just like, he says the thing.
The way the article framed it is that they're going to leave him to peacefully write his nominal class critiques and just like laugh and give him a paycheck because this is, as you say, this is like a imaging win for them.
Yeah.
Oh, did you hear that the conservatives are actually more open and support and tolerant than the left these days? Like that's what they're trying to ride this on.
Yeah, that is the baffling undercurrent in media that is being promoted with this. Yes. So much for the tolerant left. That's the thing.
I am low-key impressed that a writer at Politico does not consider the American Enterprise Institute a progressive institution, though.
Yeah.
That's how
Give it another like 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Christ. Well, speaking of laundering right-wing talking points as a supposedly neutral publication or even liberal publication, the New York Times offers us another insight into this abortion debate.
Only the best minds at work there.
The pro-life generation. Young women fight against abortion rights. Many American women mourn the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe, but for others it was a moment of triumph and a matter of human rights.
We get it. When one side wins, another side loses. Like, we understand this is an issue that has polarized. There are people who support it. There are people who are against it. Why is this news?
It should be noted that the average age of the pro-life generation is like 73. So why are they using young women to launder that?
I'm sure there's a fair number of psychotic young women who think that keeping babies alive, somehow fetuses alive, is...
It's like 15% versus 85%.
Yeah, but those 15% can't erase those 15%, Alex. They exist.
Yeah. I would love nothing more than to erase those 15%.
Well, that's what they're stopping. No longer erasure's not allowed anymore.
How could I have done this?
That's was gonna be the first thing I said. Can I see some stats on this? Some comparison of sizes because many.
I'll give you a size comparison.
Okay.
Got him.
Not really sure what that means in this context. It worries me a little bit. Yeah, I mean, using the word many kind of leads you to infer that they're like of comparable size, the two sides. But as you point out, Alex, that's not the case, even by any stretch of the imagination or consideration of what's close to one number from another. Yeah, I mean, the New York Times does this more and more. I mean, they've always done this. They fucking love to do this. They love to be contrarian, to give light to the unusual take, which is really just the take from conservative power.
Right.
And they keep doing it on trans issues, on abortion issues, on women's rights issues, on minority issues, whatever. Really any kind of cause where it would be so easy to just amplify the voices and form a consolidated front towards things that make lives better and protect people. But no, they gotta be, well, did you consider what this person whose aunt I met at Harvard told me I should give them a space to write about? How about that? It's annoying, obviously, for just to consume this and see these headlines over and over, but it's really like they're just doing the work for the bad guys, to put it in like very reductive terms.
Yeah.
And they're happy to do so over and over again. Like, they just keep doing it. You can count on these every week.
It's like without fail, they will publish an evil headline supporting an incredibly violent anti-human rights minoritarian position, overwhelmingly opposed by younger people, and then go meet the 6 young women who support Team Evil. Now you must also support Team Evil, like by implication, right? Or else you hate young women. It's like meet the 6 slaves who wished the Confederacy was still in power. It's I don't
meet the one family of Jews who voted for Hitler. Like, okay,
right. What the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, is it not obvious to them that they're doing this? Like, do they care what their actual political ideology is? Because I never would have thought, for all of their warmongering and all their bullshit, that the New York Times was like wavering on abortion.
Why would they not?
Because that's not like their thing. They're supposed to be like haughty New York elites. That abortion was never even a topic of relevance to them. That's like some crank shit from the hinterlands of the South. That's not supposed to be something the New York Times invades on against.
They don't have principles. Their principle is wealth.
Right, but what does it have to do with like crazy Taliban shit?
They make money writing evil shit. Because it gets people like you and millions of angry women going, who are these motherfuckers? To click the article, and that triggers an ad, which they get paid 5 cents for.
So
that's how this works.
Purely
it's
cynical,
totally
like,
captured by capital, yes.
They
will write Bap Baby is planning to nuke Iran tomorrow if it gets clicks. They don't have integrity. They don't have to be honest. They don't have principles. They don't believe in human rights. They believe in the dollar.
Well, then why not publish just pro-Trump shit all the time and cash in on that? That was hugely popular. Like, they obviously have some mixture between those positions.
Because de facto, being anti-Bernie, being anti any progressive politics, plays into the hands of those things. They get to be smarmy and get what they want, which is business-friendly people in charge.
I don't know. I don't really buy that they are so dead inside that they would be willing to see abortion stripped from the entire country just to make like an ad buck. It strikes me as there are competing. My guess would be that there are competing factions within the New York Times. There are those
that's the other thing. It's not a hegemon. There's not one editor. It's hundreds of people who have a whole spectrum of ideas. But what fundamentally what they all do agree on is getting larger paychecks. And the way the journalistic industry works now is entirely ad and view and revenue based. People aren't giving subscriptions to the New York Times and getting a paper in the mail. It doesn't work that way. They don't have a relationship with their readership anymore. It is a globalized readership, and it is all done digitally, and it's prone to all the problems with digital commerce. And they've been evil the whole time. That's the other secret. The New York Times has been evil the whole time.
But they're, like obviously the evidence is there that you're correct in the broad scope of things, but also they're people are they're people are writing these articles, and that, like it is really the kind of the sheen of intellectualism that they really manicure more than anything else on the or attempt to on the New York Times, really just makes this all the more venal and pathetic. Because they pretend they cosplay as academics, as educated, as critical thinkers, and they just shovel this garbage out into the world, making it a more toxic and dangerous place week in, week out. Which is like, when you do this, maybe the first time you're like, I'm just throwing a wrench in the works. I'm pushing back at all my progressive colleagues who are all part of a hive mind. But then, like, when you do this, when this is part of your institution, and you're either greenlighting this as editors or writing this as writers, it really is a stain on you as a writer, as a person, and on your paper. But it's I think that's really where it's so easy to kind of paint with a broad strokes brush a paper as being bad, but as both of you have pointed out, it's a plurality of people.
It's not the paper that's bad. It's the people that are bad.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone at the New York Times is bad. I have writers there that I enjoy reading.
I love Applebaum.
Yeah, it's really sickening, especially since they have for so long worn this cap of being the liberal light in the news sphere, which they're obviously not. But
I mean, I long ago abandoned any idea that they had like left economic views or left, anti-imperial views. Those are long gone. But the idea that they're like Ronald Reagan now, the idea that they're like fucking Jerry Falwell writing for the New York Times is like one of the dumbest outcomes that I would not have predicted until now. But it really goes to show, like, as Jason suggests, either they just don't give a shit and it's just clicks, or they really are fundamentally a conservative paper in almost every regard at this point. That they're publishing shit that, like, I would be embarrassed to read this in like the Sun or like New York Daily News. Like, this is disgusting and wrong.
The New York Times is a mirror. It's a funhouse mirror, but it's an attempt to mirror back to America what its culture actually is. And it's an apt point you bring up, Alex, which is that as America politically has moved farther right over the last 40 years at an accelerated pace. I mean, we can look at the movement from Nixon to Reagan, and that's like an active effort done by a lot of the same people who basically undid Roe. That there's been an acceleration even since then because of, I would argue, capital and deregulation of the economy. That the New York Times of the 70s and 80s is going to, by definition, look different than the New York Times of the 2020s. Because one, it's run by different people, 40, 50 years older, or, younger rather. But two, it reflects our times. It reflects the news of our times. It reflects the attitudes of our times. And the attitudes of people today are more conservative, less communitarian, more callous and cold and individual and less focused on things like human rights and dignity than in the past.
But
so their work will reflect that.
But here's the ultimate irony. That actually I completely disagree with. It's only the boomer generation where that's true. The people who are, editors at New York Times.
No, but what I'm saying is
the people they're mischaracterizing in the quote pro-life generation, the people who are young people right now are the most pro-choice that they've been since the issue was introduced.
Right, but what I'm saying is there were young people in the 70s and 80s, and there are young people now. What I'm saying is the young people in the 70s and 80s aren't the New York Times op-ed writers. Right. What I'm saying is the old farts in charge then versus the old farts who are in charge now, who have become old farts throughout that interim period, are reflecting the culture that they live in now.
I mean, I think one of the purposes of the Times is to try to reinforce conservative values amongst a centrist to liberal set who otherwise think of themselves as not conservative. And this is one of many pieces that aims to do just that. It's just wild to me that as the country actually moves way to the left of its own political elite on these kinds of issues, where you have like an internal Democratic revolt to like get rid of Biden because he's not pro-choice enough, which is actually a consideration. Like the country has actually moved way to the left of not only the Democratic Party, but also the New York Times.
But our spheres of power have not. Our spheres of power have moved right.
Yeah, and it kind of gives away the game that like the New York Times is really just kind of doing stenography for the
they reflect
parties.
the elites. They reflect the elites.
They're not really making any effort to make their own moral calculation about whether something is good or bad. It's just like, this is what is happening.
They're not perestroika. They're not reflecting what the masses are feeling. They're reflecting what the people in New York City in high-rise buildings believe.
Which, if you want to say like, hey, we're the New Yorker, that's like it says it on our publication that we're elites. Fine.
That's why I prefer the New Yorker.
But the New York Times is like, hey, this is the pro-life generation. They are falsely attributing their own craven, disgusting take to an entire generation of young people who could not be more the other way. So it's both false and essentially like defamatory. Like you are implying these incredibly evil views are shared by a majority of the current generation, which is completely wrong and objectively wrong. So I don't know. Like I haven't read this article because I want to vomit just reading the headline. But like, there's no redeeming this headline. There's no possible way you could read this headline as anything but false. So just really staggering to me.
Genuinely, the New Yorker is more progressive than the New York Times.
Yeah, it's wild.
I love the New Yorker. I know that it's like funny to read. It's like, oh, this is what elite liberals think. It's fun. It's good. It's a good time.
Well, as I alluded to, unless you had any last thing, Aiden.
Just that they really are the epitome of the, and I mean this because that's like their entire, the actual personality of their entire editorial board. The liberal in name who can say, the phrase, "Oh, all my conservative friends." ...
Yeah.
It's like they like the milieu, you know.
I think there's also one more cultural thing going on here,
Sure.
which is that over the last 20 years, one, as we focus more on the impact of politics, and two, as the economy has become more digitized, literally the same way like slavery happened, the world has moved away. The American focus of attention has moved away from New York City onto Washington, D.C. and L.A. and San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Like, literally, New York City is less relevant as a place, as like the capital of the world, than it's ever been. And I think we're seeing some of that tension and anger and like lashing out and like death throes because, you know, the geographic relevance is a thing. And Americans just don't care about New York City anymore. The New York City sports teams suck. No one even lives in New York City anymore in like the big buildings. It's all bought out by Chinese billionaires.
How the fuck would they? It's cost a fortune.
Right. Like there's young people and there's poor people and there's like ethnic people and there's, you know, young people who want to make something of themselves on Broadway. But otherwise, New York City is a dying city. And so the newspaper reflects that. Where's all the energy and the action? It's in Texas as people are moving there. It's in DC where all like the evil people are in charge. It's in all of California where everyone has moved and all the tech industries are started.
Sure, or it's in like Brooklyn instead of Manhattan. Like you don't have to go quite that drastic.
Yeah, sure.
The cities morph and change, and which parts are most important and which parts are kind of up and coming and which parts are dying shift around. I wouldn't go so far as to say that the entirety of New York City is a dying city. It's not fucking, you know, Detroit. But
well, no, I don't mean it's like totally blighted. What I mean is it's like intellectually dying. It's being drained. It's no longer the cultural focus.
Yeah, I don't have the same perspective in terms of like the state of the city, but I do have the same perspective on how it's portrayed. It feels like it's no like it used to be like the blue darling, you know, the blue pearl of the East, the progressive pearl of the East, and yeah, that's been completely captured by California, both because it's become impossible to ignore just how much of a conservative rot New York has, but also because of the prevailing narrative that California is some kind of socialist paradise or failed socialist attempt.
Sometimes you hear like Seattle or you hear like Chicago.
Yeah, and the reality is that just California's huge, and that the West Coast is just more economically vibrant currently than the East Coast.
But I mean, the overriding economic reality is that all of these places are just the cities are more progressive than the hinterlands, and coastal cities are the few places in which some progressive things still happen, though not nearly as many as they used to happen. So like, there's no real part of the country that's like, wow, what a democratic socialist utopia we've created here. It's all rumor mongering and bullshit. Like,
I'm not even saying it has anything to do with politics. I'm saying the New York Times being self-conscious about its cultural import, that it's about its importance and its space that it occupies in American media.
Yeah, I mean, that's sure, but this is also the same paper that was like, let's not get rid of slavery too fast. So like, they've always been shit. Like this is not a new take.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. They've also always been shit.
It's just that like, it's amazing to me which things they seem to be budging on and when. Of all the times to have this take, this is not the time.
But
the time to write this article was like 1979, as like a new generation of Christian evangelicals indoctrinated their kids into thinking that abortion was murder out of nowhere.
Well, look, I swear I have a point here. Like, this is why I brought up Stephen A. Smith, because as the media has changed, the New York Times is now in the business of giving hot takes. Yeah. Of giving spicy takes, of like being wrong, and that gets clicks. Like, there's a reason the number one watch show on Fox is fucking Skip and Shannon. It's two dipshits. Skip Bayless, who's Stephen A. Smith's former rival, he basically is famous for being wrong about everything in sports, and Shannon Sharpe, who's a giant former football player, who's also wrong about everything. And they spend half their time of every day arguing who's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Like, because there is money and there is attention and there is intrigue in these ancient ideological battles. And
the ancient ideological battle between LeBron and
yes, but what I'm saying is just Jordan. Like giving hot takes, saying rank wild shit to get attention and for people to meme you is currency. That's what gets observed and taken in.
Rank wild shit. I have a play in 3 acts that I will now present to you in article form. We're already on the topic. These are respectively from The Washington Post, Reuters, and The Hill. First article. 2 long weeks inside Biden's struggle to respond to abortion ruling. Many Democrats were dismayed by his slow-footed response, but cheered his more forceful tone and actions Friday.
I really appreciate his tone. Didn't Roe v. Wade get overturned in like a month ago?
Thereabouts. 3 weeks.
No, June 24th, right?
Second article. Biden planned to nominate anti-abortion judge day before U.S. Supreme Court ruling.
That's the Reuters one, right? Because it's just like a matter of fact
Yeah.
statement. Yeah, this one's gone around. Everyone's seen that at this point.
And third article. Frustrated Democrats mull drastic step, challenging Biden in 2024.
Yeah, fucking right.
So there was a period. I mean, I know all this might seem like, as you say, old news because it's been a whole lot of things happening in just under a month. But there was a lot of time, like, I mean, arguably decades of time, but at the very least 2 months of time to plan for this attempted destruction of our
thought it was longer,
civil
wasn't it?
rights.
In February that the memo leaked?
Something like that.
In all of March, April, May.
They had a long fucking time to plan for this, and they didn't because, one, they don't care, and two, they have no solution. So there's this crazy media period for like a week or two, which was like, what's Biden's plan? Like, what's he gonna do? How is he gonna fight this thing? And then the obvious reality was he's not gonna fight it. And then you have the release like, oh shit, it turns out one of the reasons he's not gonna fight is because he never gave a shit because he was nominating fucking anti-abortion judges himself. He didn't give a shit.
His grand deal with McConnell to get people in the judiciary passed.
Yeah, because McConnell's gonna honor that for sure. And finally, it culminates in something that I think is interesting and almost certainly necessary if he's dumb enough and healthy enough to run again, which is primarying Joe Biden in 2024, which is almost unheard of, but like his favorability is in the 30s even now. He's widely despised within and without his party. I don't actually think this is impossible. Like, I think there's actually a chance we primary Joe Biden.
But we're like 2.5 years out. 2 years out from people starting this shit. So his favorability will be different then. This is as unlikely as the Trump running third party.
Something could happen to suddenly bolster him, but he's on a unambiguous downward trajectory and he didn't even start that high in the first place. Much like Trump, he pretty much feels like a one-term president. So the question is, are we going to turn on this motherfucker or not? Because I'd love to, like, as a country, as a party, as a political force, because I think it would be very interesting to see like who could we get in there in 2024 who could actually change course for this country.
It would be someone more conservative. There is no future here where the Democratic Party is like, no, you're right, let's get AOC in there. It's not going to happen.
I wouldn't say there's no future, but it's certainly not what the current Democratic elites want.
You'd have to replace every single Democratic senator and every single party elite.
Well, let's even take a step back. Do you guys think that it is even in like the realm of possibility that Biden is primaried in 2024?
No.
There's an article that I didn't end up using in my last episode from The Atlantic on this topic that's called "Democrats Need a Real Primary Contest." So this is not an idea that is going around establishment papers. It would be extremely unusual. I think there's a chance. I think there's a small chance. Yeah, I do think that there's a chance.
Yeah.
He's so wildly unpopular.
I would put the chances greater that Trump runs third party. Because
the wildest of all worlds is we primary Biden and
because I think what's most likely to happen is I think Trump is soon going to announce his 2024 presidential run.
Yeah, very likely.
It's going to be down to him and DeSantis. I almost guarantee it. And because they're actually good at politics, and by politics I mean getting elected and holding power, I think they're going to strike some fucking bargain, even though they hate each other. Trump hated Pence, didn't matter. So
what's the bargain? Like Trump VP?
Yeah, that like Trump's gonna die soon anyway. No, that Trump's gonna be president again because that's what matters to him, and then he'll fucking his heart will explode, and then we'll get DeSantis. Like it'll be JFK LBJ for cycle right wingers.
All right, well, that's answering a question I wasn't asking. I'm not worried about what the Republicans are doing.
What I'm saying is that's going to beat Biden.
Well, right, but if everyone can see that that's going to beat Biden, shouldn't we primary him before that happens?
Should we? Yes. Will we? No.
Well, let's put it this way: it is certainly unlikely. It's certainly uncommon, right, to try to primary a sitting president because generally speaking, incumbents have the power of name recognition, celebrity. They can point to things they've done. They can point to experience. And
It's
whatnot.
the only reason he won in the first place.
Historically, it is not common to challenge an incumbent president, but when you consider that he's going to be 81 and he's already fog-brained and already dying, and everyone doesn't want him to run again, including in his own party. Yeah, I think this is one of the few circumstances where it makes perfect sense to primary him.
I see what you're saying.
He's
because
going to actually run again.
To even get him across the finish line in the first place required a conspiracy of the entire party.
Yeah.
What's to stop them from just conspiring the other way now?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll put some fucking piece of shit to replace him.
Yeah, it'll be like Buttigieg or something.
Yeah, I think Buttigieg would make sense. I think almost any of those people from the 2020 primaries.
Can we then just pretend Kamala Harris doesn't exist?
Well, that's the other thing. They
She'll
can't
just
let it
fade into the ether.
They can't let it be her because she's even as fucking unpopular as he is. Maybe even more so. I don't want to do too much horse race shit, but I think it would set actually a good precedent if a dog shit president could be primaried regularly, not just once in a blue moon. We should be able to say this president sucks and they lied to us repeatedly. They're done.
I have a question. This is kind of unrelated, but can Supreme Court justices run for office?
They would have to resign from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, can Clarence Thomas be like, I have now spoken, and he gets out of his chair, he's like, I'm going to become president.
I don't know what the technical constitutional rules are on that, but it seems incredibly fucking unlikely. First of all, it's more powerful to be the Supreme Court, honestly.
I know. Well, I guess my point was I was trying to think of that woman who's very unpopular, Klobuchar, but I couldn't come up with it. All I could come up with the K, so I thought Kagan. I was like, maybe Kagan for president.
Yeah, that's what we need.
I don't know.
The most popular Supreme Court justice.
She's cool-ish.
I mean,
I'd vote a Kagan Sotomayor ticket.
If we could get a Warren out of this, that would be cool. That'd be
maybe step over Biden.
Yeah, considering what we're working from.
Get her stupid dog.
Yeah, I mean, she's horrible, and she's still a world better than Biden. She used to be a Republican. He's still a Republican. I mean, that's basically the difference. But yeah, I mean, I guess the reason why I even bring this up is because the Republican Party's so far gone that the general election's irrelevant. You can't vote for the Republicans because they're never a real option. So the only actual Democratic choice is in the primary. So if we don't take seriously the primary option for an incumbent president, there's no democracy, right? There's no choice being made. It's just you have to vote for the one that's not the Republican, which I think locks us in even more brutally than it already tends to be.
And Warren's pretty old too.
Well, they're all fucking old.
She's 73. I mean, she'll be 75 if she runs again.
But again, Trump is going to be 78. They're all going to be old.
I'm not saying they're not old. I'm saying the whole point of this is find some young, new, hot.
Yeah, that would be strongly preferable.
Progressive prospects.
Yeah.
The whole allure of JFK is that he was fucking young and not a psycho ghoul, except that he actually.
Yeah, and that he was fucking Marilyn Monroe. That's how it works. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, part of this I thought was interesting is that there may actually genuinely be a primary challenge to Biden, which I would strongly support almost any candidate against Biden within the Democratic primary. I say almost because they'll find someone worse, but almost any.
Did you know that AOC will be 35 less than a month before the 2020?
Yeah, but they're not going to. That she needs even more time to fucking marinate in the Democratic.
You mean become evil
machine before
become
they'll give her
imbecile?
A shot. I'm not saying what I would like. I'm saying realistically, for her to have any shot at running, she would need to be a senator.
Came out of nowhere. He was just some dipshit senator who no one gave a shit about.
Yeah, but you're pretty much always a senator or a governor. A representative is not usually enough to leap into the presidency.
Let me check that. I know that's generally true, but I want to check how many reps have.
If she could sneak into New York Senate and run that for a couple terms, then I think she actually would be in a good position to run. We don't usually do horse race shit on the show because our democracy is so decrepit and fallen that it's embarrassing and doesn't usually work.
Electoralism is the most depressing thing to discuss in the world.
But at the same token, we don't have a lot of viable revolutionary or collective action options to us at the moment. So it is at least to some degree interesting to see whether we could fix some of the rot, but I don't know.
I was thinking about how funny it would be because I think he's probably, if he had the experience, he probably would be pretty popular. But thinking about Featherman, like leapfrogging over the Senate race directly into the presidency.
Does everyone in the Democratic Party have to have a stroke?
Yeah, you can only be president after a stroke.
Jesus Christ!
But then that also made me think of, I don't know if you guys saw this, the Republican candidate, not that he's running against, but Herschel Walker, former.
Yep.
Oh Christ!
What about him?
You see the most recent video of him where he just claims that he used to be an FBI agent.
Yeah, I do.
He's doing Steven Seagal shit?
Yeah,
he really is.
Why not Steven Seagal for president?
And then a whole bunch of like female drone pilots came out to scold him.
Yeah.
Being like, as former FBI agents ourselves, this is very disrespectful.
Man. Yeah, Steven Seagal for president. Why not? He would probably help with China relations, right? Or does he like?
Yeah, it's and North Korea and Russia.
I mean, that would immediately normalize our relations with Russia. Whether that's desirable or not, that's a different question. What do we think? I mean, this is the other half of this mini menagerie of articles. What does Joe Biden think about abortion? Do we care? Does he care? Does anyone care? Because this has been a huge topic for the news.
Does Joe Biden?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is Joe Biden's like religiosity basically just saying "fuck it"? I'm glad abortion's gone. Like, is that what he's quietly thinking, or is he just so feckless that he doesn't want this to happen and he can't stop it?
He doesn't have any means to stop it. Is the issue? Trump won. He got the people in their lifetime appointments. He can't kill them. Like the battle was lost.
Right now, the House just passed a protection of access to abortion on a federal level. All it would need is to pass the Senate. So,
and it won't, because Joe Manchin exists.
All he has to do is fucking overcome the filibuster, right? Like, which he could have done at any point so far by deciding to do it, right? Like, you just have to have the political will to say we're getting rid of the filibuster because you have a majority in Congress.
They won't do that.
He won't do it, right? Like, he could literally right now enshrine as federal law that abortion is accessed at a federal level, but he's not going to do it because he doesn't want to fight the filibuster. So, like, I guess the only question that really kind of leaves me with is, like, is Joe Biden secretly pro-life?
Pro-children. I mean, well, but it's not that simple, because those changes would have downstream effects that I'm sure I'm sure they would, but they would have also had downstream effects like getting his Build Back Better passed or getting his party to, like, not lose every election to Republicans. Like, the downstream effects are almost all good for his party. So but not good for his, like, New York Times brain.
I guess what I'm saying is, I in my heart of hearts, I'm starting to think that Joe Biden has always been pro-life. That's just what I'm feeling here. Nominating pro-life justices, hand-wringing when he had years, decades to prepare for this.
Not justices, but just lower court judges.
Well, judges in lower courts. Like, he's not. It doesn't even just seem like he doesn't care. It seems like he's actively fine with this.
Yeah, I mean, there are things he could certainly be doing now that have been mentioned in many publications. Whether we're talking about declaring a public health emergency, whether we're talking about trying to use federal land for abortion clinics. But I think I read this opinion piece a while ago on how Biden works. And I think it's accurate. It's that he only really works hard for things that he cares deeply about or thinks are important, and that's why he worked so hard despite all the backlash to pull us out of Afghanistan, because he has a deep personal tie through losing his own son to interventionism overseas and the cost that it has to soldiers and to Americans, at least as he views it. And so I think, I've mentioned before that he's never been pro-abortion in any real way. At best, he's been neutral. So he doesn't care about this at all. I don't know if he's fully pro-life in his heart of hearts. Like, he's like, this is actually good. I can just let it play out now. But I think he does not care. He's happy to just let it move forward. It's not worth his energy, in his opinion.
Yeah. And I think for once, this actually has galvanized almost the entire Democratic Party, like, against him. Because even the fucking conservative, like, wing of it was still socially liberal on this type of question. Like, I've never seen more centrists angry with Joe Biden than the last month.
Yeah, but it was done too early. This energy's not going to last for 2 years.
Well, but the horrors of removing women's health access will continue for years and years to
Not
come.
quite, because as you said, there's already there's like these patchwork solutions already on offer. I was thinking about one that would be really funny, which is like the same way we can't regulate and make rules over native land and like settlement. What do we call it? Like tribal lands? What
Reservations.
Reservations. So it would be funny if all these like industrious, entrepreneurs want to start abortion clinics on Indian reservations. Because like our Roe being knocked down wouldn't matter there, and then you could go to like Foxwoods to go gamble and then get an abortion.
Yeah, and once again, it would be trying to use indigenous people to solve a problem in the American federal system, which should never have been their problem.
Right, but my point is there are already a bunch of patchwork things. As you say, there's attempted legislation, there's judges blocking local orders and changes, there's sanctuary cities for this thing equivalently. Like there's people that will pay for transportation and travel to a place where it is legal. Like it's
but you know as well as I that this isn't even going to fix like 5% of the damage.
No, so, but also but most of the damage has also been symbolic, because so many places already had such insane restrictions on abortion that abortion was already almost de facto illegal in a huge majority, a large number of the American states, like for years already. So this was just another like a big symbolic win and a trigger for a lot of other states, which were only like 95% of the way there. So it's, this battle will continue to be fought for years. I don't know if it'll be successfully linked and tied and blamed on Joe Biden, but we'll see.
Do you have something
good? I was just going to say that I was going to comment on the reservation thing. It would be a funny side effect as we are now watching the Supreme Court strip away protections for indigenous people's lands if they fell their way into allowing them to be used federally for abortion clinics. That would be some small means of poetic justice, but
it's like somehow like some horribly regressive workaround where they're like, okay, you can only keep your land if you provide abortions. They start like coercing them somehow.
Yeah, progressive.
I would not put it past the current administration to do some dumbass hack like that instead of making a logical decision. And also, like, I can't think of a single American president that's been like respectful of indigenous people. So, all right, well, it's time for our what do you call it? Intermission with a dog article from LA Times. Tahoe National Forest hiker found by his own dog. True Lassie, dog leads rescue team to man who plunged 70 feet near Tahoe National Forest. You ever get lost and your dog finds you?
I mean, in my own mind palace, sure.
So we have another national hero dog?
Well, not only is he a national hero, like, the subhead was not actually obvious. I dug it out just for context. If you just read the title, it's just a dog found the hiker. But they didn't say he was lost.
Yeah, the dog ran away for a while and then eventually found his way back.
Yeah, I just was laughing for a while when I read this one.
Why would you go hiking without your dog?
It's almost like he went hiking, he left the dog at home, the dog's like, fuck that, and it jumps out and it goes to him because it's like, I want to go hiking. It's like, all right, cool story.
Gotcha, bitch.
What a hero. Right, so it's the inverse of a runaway dog story. It's a runaway owner. The dog's like, have you seen my stupid owner? My stupid owner.
He's trying to ghost me.
I don't know. There's the way it's phrased, maybe chuckle.
However much we might pontificate over whether or not people in this country are getting worse on the whole, the dogs are staying good, folks.
All I watch these days are dog channels. I was just checking YouTube. I've watched the top 10 wombat videos on YouTube. Like, all I do all day is watch animals because everything else is too depressing.
The top wombat videos?
Like, all the top 10 most viewed wombat videos out there, I've watched them all. But I'm now working on the next set.
All right. Well, you got to mind those for some animal articles, though. I wish we could linger here longer, but let's talk about a much more depressing version of public spaces from WCYB, which I think is a affiliate of NBC.
A radio channel,
or a TV station.
Television.
I'm not 100%. public camping in Tennessee becomes a felony, homeless seek refuge. So yes, they've done it, folks. They've made being homeless a crime.
But you just have to. It's like the sovereign citizen thing. You're like, I'm not driving. I'm traveling. I'm not camping. I'm loitering, or like, well, there's got to be some non-criminal word to re-describe the homeless.
You just have to operate like a shark, never completely still.
But yeah,
You're always moving slightly.
If you are like sleeping in a place you can be seen that is not your property, it is now a felony. It's just wild. Like we joke about them doing it, but like, no, they did it.
But this is Tennessee, which has tons of green land, and like, aren't there people who go camping?
Yeah, it's a felony now because they were just looking. They had to get the homeless one way or the other. So fuck camping too.
Massive tourism industries in all these beautiful southern states for people to go camping. What about all like the white people who live in, trailer parks? Like, that's camping.
Okay, but who's enforcing this, right? Do you think the police can't tell the difference between someone who's camping and someone who's homeless? They know what this law is.
No, but I don't think anyone's going to enforce this.
Wow. I don't know about that.
Just the concept of it is so insane. It's like,
this will get knocked down by a court. It doesn't make any sense.
And honestly, if this makes it up to the Supreme Court, it's going to lead to something much worse than it currently is.
Yeah,
it's going to be like, if you smell like you're homeless, you can be shot by police.
I mean, that's a trajectory, if anything, makes it to the Supreme Court at this point. But I mean, we're right back to like workhouses in the UK in the fucking 1840s or whatever. Like, this poverty is now a criminal offense. If you can't afford rent or afford a home and you're homeless, that is now a crime in Tennessee. Like, I don't even know what else to say. Like, what are you supposed to be doing if you can't afford rent or a home?
Die.
Do you just die? Do you not sleep? Do you not find a place to lay down?
You move somewhere where it's not illegal to be homeless.
Do you have to do like mole people like hiding in the sewers? Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, you have to go to the catacombs of Paris or whatever.
Because like, they'll say, oh no, we just wanted to make sure they were all in shelters. It's like, okay, but there's not enough shelters for all the homeless people. And the shelters are dog shit. So like, what? This is just carte blanche for the police to brutalize homeless people and it to be legal. Which is insane.
And I bet you that it's a felony, right? Yeah, it says felony.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll lose their voting rights.
Yep.
It's certainly not part of the plan.
I don't understand the rationale. Like, they have to launder it as not just saying explicitly being homeless is illegal. So they've had to change the language around and say camping.
Right.
But like,
people are taking advantage of our,
Tennessee will lose out on billions of dollars of revenue of camping.
Well, even besides the fact that I almost guarantee you the police are not going to arrest anyone who looks like they can.
But forget the police. Forget the police. What are all the people who own like business, like EMSs in Tennessee, going to do? Their job is now technically illegal. The goods they sell are now technically illegal.
And they're aiding and abetting camping.
Right, like, this has downstream effects.
It would if anyone was confused as to what this meant.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that the plan is to sell off, parcels to private companies to allow permits to be bought, and then you buy a permit and you're camping on private ground now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly a great excuse to continue to dismantle any remaining public land, and to sell it off to, as you say, some private corporation or business interest.
But what's to stop some good Samaritan from saying, I own 50 acres of land, it's private, I'm going to let homeless people sleep on
Well, nothing necessarily, but that is much preferable to them to ever seeing a homeless person. So if some good Samaritan wants to take homeless people and hide them in their field in the middle of nowhere, they would still take that over them existing in a town somewhere or in a city somewhere. So even if they can't brutalize them, they at the very least are forcing them out.
Saying the conservative state?
Yeah, the conservative state would like nothing more than to just grind these people into dust.
Private solutions to this?
If a private solution can remove homelessness from their cities, not by actually fixing it, but by just literally removing them, that would be great too. That's basically all they really want.
All right, capitalism, get on it.
Yeah, they're looking for a privatized solution to homelessness.
All right, Musk, we got to use those boring tunnels for something.
Speaking of which,
oh no.
Got a couple hot takes from our
Dude, you
good
seen
old
that
boy.
fucking dad bod picture of him?
We're getting there.
Holy shit, my dude.
This one's just brief because it made me laugh. From Fox Business, Elon Musk responds with laughing meme to Twitter lawsuit over broken buyout. Twitter has reportedly retained lawyers to sue Elon Musk for moving to drop his $44 billion takeover of the company. You ever get sued and you respond with a meme?
Yes, he's done this many times now. That's his favorite thing to do. He's terminally online. We all know it. We've seen it it's like, yeah. He did this whole scree about bots and like know you, and he's just a fucking shitlord.
I mean, on the one hand, it's very funny to me that Twitter's now getting fucked by their deal with the devil that they basically agreed to with them. On
The
other
tragedy
hand,
is go ahead.
Oh, you go.
The tragedy is that the news has to pump out garbage headlines like this. Laughing me. You have like Walter Cronkite saying, in other news today, Twitter, Elon Musk posted his laughing, crying face meme. Like,
it feels
the indignity.
It feels like if the news had nothing better to do than like read through our discords and be like, what was the roundup of this week's memes? That's what this feels like today. Someone posted the dog in a burning room meme in response to being late to an event. Like, all right, thanks. I don't know. Like, our media landscape has become such hell. Like, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, everything to some degree is BuzzFeed at this point. Yeah. I mean, it's always fun to see him clearly coping. But also it just like he's just gonna spend a absurd amount of money to draw this out in litigation and come out scot-free. So
he will suffer no personal consequences from this whatsoever.
It's hard to really take it to heart as good news, but it is fun because he is so shallow and so fragile.
Yeah, no, this is still terrible news because the amount of litigation that this will wrap up and the amount of busy work this will create for all these bureaucrats instead of doing like helping poor people who get their shit stolen. Like, there is a consequence and a cost to private firms using the entirety of the justice system's resources.
Yeah, sucks. But also, at least he doesn't own Twitter. So that's nice.
I don't think it would have made a difference. I don't even use Twitter. I don't give a shit. Fuck Twitter. I think Twitter is a huge contributor to why our discourse sucks.
Oh, no, I'm with you on all that. I just think it would have been even worse if he owned it.
I just want like a new FDR who could just take over Twitter and say, this is our new public forum, and guess what? Laws apply here.
This is a long headline, but it's just that there's a bunch of fun subtitles to the same headline. So this is a headline from The Guardian, which has broken a pretty major story. Uber broke laws, duped police, and secretly lobbied governments, leak reveals. More than 124,000 confidential documents were leaked to The Guardian. They exposed the attempts to lobby Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz, and George Osborne. Emmanuel Macron secretly aided Uber lobbying in France. Company used kill switch during raids to stop police seeing data. The former Uber CEO told executives,
"Oh no, they flipped the lag switch.
Violence guarantees success." So this is, I mean, I read a little bit of this just because it was a fun article, but yeah, Uber was always monstrous, and like obviously so, because its only real purpose was to like break the back of taxi driver unions and insert this incredibly unsustainable model where people have to pay for their own job accoutrement to the point that they basically don't even make any money. So the whole thing was like a con on multiple levels.
It's almost like every industry over the last 20 years made by any entrepreneur was actually just trying to deregulate what are well-protected unionized industries. And in order to do that, they've had to totally take a loss the entire time. And the only way they stay afloat and make themselves billionaires is by getting private money. And it's been a scam the whole time. And it's every single one of these things. Every new app, every like cool startup that your cousin went to work for, they're all horseshit scam. And they're all doing illegal behavior because in the modern day, that's what doing business means.
And like hiring psychologists to engineer addictive, manipulative gambling style reward incentives for the drivers, which never actually give them anything. Like they spent money on the wildest shit, corrupting and lobbying foreign governments. Like it turns out that Macron basically just like broke every law in France to work hand, to give them shit.
Yeah, this is the most Macron thing ever.
It's really wild. It's like I would have assumed all of these were true, but it's really funny to see it all 100% proven true.
This is the beauty of Macron's politics. He's not a conservative. He's not a liberal. He's a businessman.
But like when the French, who are notoriously pro-worker in their mass public, tried to resist this, intrusion into protected taxi driving services, and was like trying to fight off the Uber incursion, the guy's like, it's fine. If some of our drivers get killed, it's fine. Violence guarantees success. Like, if they kill some of our guys, it'll just make martyrs out of them. They never really mentioned to the drivers that this was a risk they were undertaking. It was just like, this will be a good PR for us if they do violence against our drivers. Just really insane shit. Like, it's kind of like what I think we would always assume massive scummy businesses get up to, but here it is. This is the Panama Papers of Uber.
I don't know where it's being shown, but I think there's either a docu-series or a documentary, or what do they call it? Basically a show, like a drama show about Uber, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing the CEO, and like how
the former CEO,
Steve
the
Jobs,
old evil one, yeah.
But like, these companies are all insane, and they're all giant money sinks that only exist because of huge financial investment, not because they actually generate any growth or any productivity or any product that is actually good. They break, as you said, they break the backs of other industries, and they hemorrhage money, and that's how they quote unquote compete in the marketplace.
It's, it is really a sign that nothing has changed. You look back, at least from my perspective, and like you read about, you had fruit company like sponsoring literal coups in Guatemala and other places in South and Central America. And you're like, wow, that's so bizarre that like a fruit company is overthrowing governments.
Yeah.
Now you have like a rideshare company giving like Sith Lord quotes about violence. It's,
right.
Yeah, I love democracy.
Yeah. It's wild how much same old world long as capitalism is thriving.
Yeah, this is this entire article read like Wolf of Wall Street, like just blatant fraud.
They might have done more illegal shit than Jordan.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're having quotes like on their private Discord or service or whatever that's like, everything we're doing is illegal. Is that fine? And they're like, yes, keep going. So yeah, really just straight up crime, like just straight up like mafia style crime, like organized, very obviously intended, bribing politicians, so on and so forth. So very good. I hope Uber is scourged from the earth. We'll find out in the next few years what happens to them. Probably nothing, but if this goes anywhere,
it's all up to Lyft to save us.
Brought to you by Lyft. Yeah, exactly.
Type in your discount corner, new pod 2020. Get a free ride with Lyft that you can then Hatchet Man your
the new pod sells out. Sunny title card.
Ridiculous.
All right, I got one last play in 3 acts for you from New York Times, National Review, and CNBC, respectively.
What is this Shakespearean episode we've been doing?
We're taking too long, so I have to condense them into trilogies because they were already organized that way. First article: amid attacks and thefts, some retail workers want to fight back. Assaults at stores have been increasing at a faster pace than the national average. Some workers are tired of fearing for their safety.
Wait. Assaults at stores as opposed to assaults like in the street or in homes?
Don't worry, it's all bullshit.
People are choosing, people like, let's throw down at the mall instead of at the parking garage? What does any of this even mean?
Are they talking about like TikTok videos?
Basically. Second article: Starbucks CEO, progressive cities have abdicated their responsibility in fighting crime.
Okay.
And then finally, employees everywhere are organizing. Here's why it's happening now.
Where are these from?
These are from New York Times, National Review, and CNBC, respectively.
Well, the National Review would make sense. That's that good stuff.
But that was there were a whole bunch of articles with very similar names and a whole bunch of neutral publications as well. Basically, when like asked why they're trying to crush unions and like just do evil, Starbucks is like, oh, what you should really be talking about is progressive DAs and liberal mayors. Like it was
yep.
Yeah.
Absolute dog shit.
George Schultz on his knees. Please protect our workers.
Yeah. But let's tackle this. So this fits into the broader media bullshit trend of implying that it is the benefit of workers to frame everything as law and order, crime and punishment. There's assaults rampant, everything. It's like there's really not.
This is almost a callback to that deep dive we did on the DoorDash workers of New York City,
exactly,
who were like starting their own gang to deal with people having their shit robbed, like losing out their bikes and getting pulled over by the cops.
With so little discussion of the fact that the actual app they're working for is robbing them so much harder. Yeah, and so it's pay no attention to the fact that we are actively trying to destroy your rights and labor organization and give you, subhuman standards of living. The issue is that there's thugs on the streets. Like it's like a fucking 80s video game, and you have to brawl with them. The workers are organizing their own worker gang to fight the criminals. That's the way this is framed. We're in an episode of fucking the Mayans, or whatever the fuck.
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah, like that's the way they want to frame all of this.
I mean, obviously this is just my own bias in the reading of this, and obviously I know it's not the intent, but to me this is just like large corporations continue to offer no protections to their own workers in any sense, even when things get physically dangerous for them. Because I do think there's an element of like, yeah, the fabric of our society is falling apart. There are a lot of like fucking messed up people out there.
No, I agree with Aiden.
Abusing workers.
Clubby pops out. It's like, it seems your society's collapsing.
We live in something of a collapsing society myself. But obviously, yeah, what they're going for is no. Criminals are leaping through Starbucks windows to berate baristas. Yeah,
because everyone knows they're so flush with cash right now.
Yeah, for me, the context is that like, yeah, their workers are have always been, in my lifetime at least, subject to extreme abuse, even in the most mundane jobs. They have to interact with the public, and I guess having cops in the store is the fix for that.
Well, just think about it. They interact with the public more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Their job is to interact with the public. They have more encounters. Some of those encounters are going to turn into, roll initiative.
Some of them will have CRs.
Yeah, Starbucks introduces armed baristas. I mean, that's where we're headed. Like, there's one door. You can only enter the Starbucks from one door, and everyone who makes your coffee is also packing heat. That will solve this problem.
It's going to be really tragic when all the mass shootings start happening at coffee shops.
That's going to be our real Olympus has fallen moment.
But, there's a reason I put this directly after the Uber CEO saying violence guarantees success. They want this to happen because this is a distraction from not only their own abuses, but from the fact that they have never at any point prioritized the health, safety, well-being, etc. of their employees. It's as if the criminal doing the violence was the issue, or the liberal progressive society not getting rid of bail reform or something is the issue, and not an entire society which impoverishes and immiserates both the workers and the supposed criminals in this situation. It's the same thing as criminalizing the fucking homeless. We do not provide alternatives to people during a pandemic when all these people lost their jobs and all these people, became underemployed and all these people are facing eviction because of the insane rent prices. It's like, yeah, crimes are going to go up. Crimes are going to go up because desperation went up because the economy's dog shit and people have no security system. There's no social safety net. So, yeah, there's going to be crime because the society is failing its population. But instead of pointing to the fact that the government has failed to prevent this, or the fact that the corporate overlords that we basically beg and scrape for jobs have failed to change these circumstances, it's, now everyone's Dirty Harry. Like, the problem was only like the moral failing of the underclass.
Yeah, the problem is it's not the 80s and we don't have Charles Bronsons everywhere.
Yeah, and it's like that was never the issue. You notice that the crime's going up during a period of unprecedented economic hardship? You think there might be a correlation there and not like the moral decay of the impoverished that this implies? I don't know.
It feeds into the idea we were getting at earlier, which is that in rich people's minds, rich people are rich because they're good, and poor people are poor because they're bad. So, of course, during hard times, the poor people are going to lash out and be bad.
Right. It's
why Starbucks CEO is talking to a newspaper about like sending the the clowns or send in like the
Yeah.
National Guard.
It's like post Calvinist like prosperity gospel shit. It's just it's not great. The framing consistently makes it seem as though the best solution for the working class is to tear each other apart and to not organize, because that's very convenient if you're a CEO or a president. The good news is, and the reason I ended it with this trifecta, the employees are recognizing the bullshit, and they are organizing, and we're seeing an extremely accelerated pace of union organization compared to any recent time in American history. Not since like the 40s have we seen the drives to unionize spread across so many different industries and so many different groups.
Accursed salters.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Some of this was covered in an obviously partisan and manipulative way. There was a horrible New York Times article trying to make it seem like this was a duplicitous act. But all the papers are starting to have to kind of acknowledge, there is actually a big resurgence in labor energy.
Yeah, they can't just keep saying great resignation when all these people are trying to get jobs and get labor unions. They're no longer resigning. It's the great unionization.
Because it turns out that the best way to protect your community is to have a strong and empowered working class that does not feel the need to resort to crime, does not feel the need to resort to being homeless and become a felon.
Balderdash.
And that is what we are seeing. So, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. In tragedy, people react sometimes more rationally because they actually see, for once, the naked elements of power and how they should react to them.
Their eyes have been opened. They're getting woke.
They're starting to believe.
You're starting to breathe air.
You're saying I can beg my employer for a raise? I'm saying when you're unionized, you won't have to. But yeah, I mean, this is where we're headed. I mean, it's bleak, but it's also hopeful that we are seeing the obvious consequences of the incredible austerity and cruelty of neoliberalism, and the consequences of a devastating pandemic that was intentionally mishandled.
As the great political philosopher Gandalf once said, on the seventh day, when it seems darkest, look to where it'll get bright. When it's darkest, it'll then get bright. Whatever it is, it's a stupid expression.
Let the horn of FDR blow one last time in the deep. Yeah. But I mean, we are seeing the intentional unwillingness to provide an international vaccine, which would have ended the pandemic. We're seeing the austerity and cruelty of neoliberalism. We're seeing the callous disregard of the Biden and Trump administrations for their public. And so we're finally seeing what should have always been recognized, which is no one's going to take care of the public except the public. So they have to stand up for themselves. And that means working people have to work together and find solidarity with each other and not try to kill each other or pretend that this is a fucking Law and Order episode. And we're figuring it out slowly, incrementally, bit by bit, but we're figuring it out. So keep going. That's what I got.
You gotta figure it out for yourself with people around you.
Primary Biden.
And yes, unionize against Biden.
I will lead us out with one last, not even a headline, just something to be aware of, because I try to end on positive things these days. If you are not making it too well through our current dystopia, this is something we mentioned casually before, from NPR, the new 988 mental health hotline is live.
Yeah, I was telling you about this.
You can now access it. You can basically, if you're in an emergency that you don't want to get killed by the police, but you do need help, this is an alternative. So take advantage of it. Never call the police. Ever. Like, short of an active shooter. And even then, I don't know.
Keep in
and
mind.
Only if you want an audience.
Yeah. Keep in mind, when you call 911, you can be like, my house is on fire.
Yeah.
Or like, I've had a heart attack. They won't just send cops to murder.
But if there's any kind of mental crisis that you're dealing with,
call 988. It's a new hotline. It works exact same way as 911. You call, you tell them what's going on. They won't send people with guns.
Right. So if you're doing well enough to organize, then organize. And if you're not, get some help. Stop. Get some help.
Stop and get some help. Yes, precisely.
All right, America. Let's hope we can all stop and get some help.
Come on, Michael Jordan. Save us. Save us from the eternal debate between you and LeBron James.
Someday I'll learn who these people are you were referencing throughout the episode.
Dude, we might be talking about LeBron James eventually. He's like a billionaire. He's a huge donor to the Democratic Party. He might fucking run for office one day.
He'll be replacing Biden in 2024 in the primary.
I would genuinely vote for LeBron James over Joe Biden.
I don't even know who he is, and I would vote for him.
Alex, you know who LeBron James is.
I know him by image, but I have no information about his character or politics. Is what I mean.
He's like the most famous basketball player on the planet. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but like, I don't know. What is he for? Like abortion? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what he's about. I just know he's a basketball player.
Whatever.
Yeah,
it doesn't really mean anything.
We'll figure it out later. LeBron James 2024 question mark? See you next time.
LeBron James Oprah ticket, I'd vote.
Yeah, dunk on whoever he runs against, that's for sure.
That's true. He could beat the fuck out of any of them.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.